Have you heard of S.A.D, seasonal affective disorder? Does it affect you in the darkest and gloomiest days of winter? It affects me in a dark and gloomy, terrible way. And when I feel down and kind of need a little lift, I make braised short ribs. Hey guys, it's Carla. I am here again in my kitchen for another episode of That Sounds So Good, my book, which is also my show, conveniently. Today I am making the braised short rib noodle bowl from day drinking and lazy lunches, because if there's anything that January is about, it's about darkness and day drinking, and like you might as well have dinner for lunch because it's dark out. So there's nothing else to do. This short rib braise is completely unlike the glazed and sticky, like red wine, demi-glace, heavy stock versions that you may have had either at home or in restaurants. It is light and bright and spicy thanks to ingredients that you might find in like a Thai curry. It's got lemongrass and shallot and ginger, and then the liquid for the braise kind of goes in a sweet and sour direction with vinegar and mirin. And then on top, you get these pickled crunchy veg to bring like some life back into it. And you get to have it on noodles. And who doesn't love noodles? I'm gonna show you how to make it. Okay, so the first step in the recipe is to season and marinate the meat. And actually, ideally, you would wanna do this about 24 hours before making the actual braise. The longer the meat has to marinate, the more flavor is going to end up in the final dish. So just keep that in mind when you are setting out to do this. Back it up a day. One of the primary flavors in the braise is lemongrass, which is so delicious and bright and lemony, really aromatic. And it's actually a grass, and the aroma is citronella. So you can like rub it all over yourself to keep bugs away too. And if you haven't used it before, I'm just going to show you how to take it apart, a little lemongrass anatomy. It's got this really hard outer layer and a pretty tough root as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is take that off and then peel off just like the toughest of the outer layers. You can eat lemongrass raw, but it has to really be pulverized because it has just a kind of a fibrous vibe, but inside it's like so sweet and nice. And I'm just taking off this like, again, tough and kind of dry top end as well. So at this point, I'm just gonna slice it before putting in the Cuisinart, just to give those blades a little bit of a head start. Lemongrass is actually lipophilic, which means its flavors are drawn out in the presence of a fat. So like using lemongrass along with oils, or like a lemongrass aioli is amazing. That fat would combine with the essences of the lemongrass to draw out its flavors. But if you just put it in like a glass of water, you're not gonna get as much payoff. So that's why pairing it with short rib is such a good combination, because that's like a naturally fatty meat. And while it's doing its braising, the fat and the lemongrass are like truly getting to know each other. And then I'm gonna add a couple of jalapenos, 1 to 2 medium, depending on how much heat you're looking for. So I'm just going to give these a check. If they're very spicy, you can take out the ribs and the seeds and kind of bring that overall spice level down. If you like it hot and you have a hot pepper, you can put the whole thing in. But let's give a taste. This is a dangerous game. Woo, yeah. Spicy. So I'll de-seed that one. Throw caution to the wind on the other one, you know? I'll live a little. You gotta warm it up. These are dark times. All right, so I've also got a couple of shallots that I pre-chopped, ginger, and whole cloves of garlic. Everybody's going in. And this will take a couple of rounds of getting blitzed. This is looking very paste-like now, so I can move forward. Okay, so to my garlic, shallot, lemongrass, ginger, jalapeno mixture, I am going to add a 1/4 cup of black vinegar, 1/4 cup of mirin, and 2 tablespoons of soy. and also 1 tablespoon of freshly ground black pepper. And at this point, I just want to almost puree it, get it really wet and broken down. It's never gonna be completely smooth. There's always gonna be some texture to it, and that is totally fine. Dunzo. All right, so this is 3 pounds of boneless short ribs cut into like 2-inch thick pieces. If you can get your butcher to just take them off the bone, they can be in like long rectangles. As long as they've got that 2 inches high, you're good. And if you are not into beef or you want to just mix this up, you can use lamb shoulder, pork shoulder, or dark meat chicken. You want to use about a tablespoon of kosher salt. If you're using fine salt, use half of that amount. And I'm seasoning the meat itself, even though there is soy sauce in the marinade, just to make sure that the meat is like properly, individually, attentively seasoned. Marinade is gonna go on. I'm going to just put like half of it in the bottom, kind of give me a head start on the combining. Any vessel, you could even do it on the same rimmed baking sheet. I just want somewhere that I can make sure that the meat is getting coated on all sides. I think the easiest way to do this now is with your hands, but you might want to use gloves because there are spicy things in here. I'm just gonna like live on the edge today. So the marinade is kind of chunky. You just have to make sure that there's no side of the meat that hasn't been touched by an angel. The angel in this case is the marinade, you know. You could absolutely just wrap this up and put it in the fridge. Your refrigerator will smell like ginger and shallot. Totally fine. I'm gonna use a large zip top bag, and this way it'll be airtight, but also I can kind of just turn the bag over and smush things around and make sure that all of the sides are still hanging out with the marinade. This does look like a lot of marinade, and it is a lot of marinade, but the marinade is going to become the foundation of the braise itself. It's going to be all of this marinade kind of showing up again and flavoring the braise liquid. Okay, see you tomorrow. I'm back. This has actually been sitting for 48 hours in the marinade. It doesn't look that different. It's a little bit darker. So now we brown. All right, so my oven is at 325. I have my beautiful marinated meats, and I have one of my Dutch ovens. You want something with a tight fitting lid that is a heavy walled pot. So a Dutch oven is really perfect for this. The other key thing before you start browning, this whole process is gonna happen over medium heat. Low and slow is your friend. Enjoy the process of browning meats. It smells so good in here. People are always looking for things to do on the weekends when it's like cold and nasty and dark out. And like, I cannot think of a more enjoyable experience than to like stand over a pot of browning meats. So the first ones that I put in, the pan is always gonna be hotter at the beginning. Now that all this meat is in here and they're snug and cozy, the temperature is coming down. So I'm just gonna start turning them over. I really do wanna see browning on all of the sides, not just like the top and the bottom. And like that's a pretty nice color to shoot for. Obviously there's going to be hotter spots in the Dutch oven. The guys in the middle might need to move out to the edges. Like this guy that basically went into the pan at the same time, not ready yet. And definitely while I'm browning the meat, and I want to see like good browning on the meat and even a little bit like an edge where it's very dark brown, I'm also taking a look at the little bits of the marinade in the bottom of the pan and making sure that they're not getting too dark. Okay, pieces are starting to be brown all over, and at that point I'm just gonna set them aside somewhere where their juices can collect. So I'm just gonna go in with a spoon, and if I see really dark bits around the edge, I'm just gonna pull them out. That's just a little bit of insurance against having like a burnt flavor in the braise, but overall, this looks really good. So at this point, the pan is still quite hot. I'm gonna take the remaining bits of the marinade and all of that liquid and deglaze the pan with it. This is a really quick process, and you wanna really be stirring the entire time. So almost immediately, all of those marinade ingredients have taken on like a beautiful browned color. And now the meat and all the meat juices can go back in. We have beautiful meats. We have beautiful browned aromatics. Now I'm gonna add about 3 cups of water. If your pan is really wide, if your pan is more narrow, that amount of water might fluctuate a little bit. I really like using water in most of my braises, especially meaty braises like this. I feel like the flavor of the meat is more than enough to create a delicious broth. And unless you have a really beautiful and delicious stock that you've made yourself, I just think water's the way to go. As soon as this liquid hits a simmer, it's going into the oven, covered, 325. It's gonna braise for 2.5 to 3 hours. I'll probably check it around the 2-hour mark and see if things are shreddy yet. And in the meantime, or at any time in this 2 to 2.5 to 3 hour window that you have, we're gonna make pickled vegetables that will be little toppings to go on top of the noodle bowl at the end. So I have a watermelon radish and also a couple more jalapenos, just something bright, spicy, be a nice counterpoint to the radish. This is a very large watermelon radish. I think the book calls for like 2 or 3 small ones, and you'll get like a smaller round slice. If you don't have a mandolin, you can do this by hand. I'm gonna do it sort of partially with the mandolin and then switch to a knife. So pretty. Okay, I'm actually gonna take these into matchsticks. So they're thinly sliced, I'm stacking them up, and I'm just gonna go crosswise. If you have a small radish, just keep them in the rounds. Same thing with a jalapeno. If you don't want spicy, leave it out. If you have a Serrano or you have a Fresno or you have some other kind of fresh hot chili, more the merrier. So I'm gonna add the salt first. A generous amount. It's a good pile of vegetables, and the salt is gonna end up in the liquid itself, so you wanna have enough of it to go around. All right, this is unseasoned rice vinegar. If you don't have rice vinegar, use malt vinegar, cider vinegar. You could use white vinegar. You could use black vinegar. You could use a blend. The key is like vinegar. So they're gonna flop down as they sit. They're gonna get softer. So they'll be like, they'll still be crunchy, but you'll be able to pick them up with your noodle and not have it be this like hard, sharp thing in the middle of the mix. I'm gonna check for salt. Looks like my ribs are ready. It's been about 2 hours and 45 minutes. Take a look. So what you want is to be able to go into the pot, kind of grab a little bit of meat and just have it shred, which that definitely did. That's a great texture. And the braising liquid now is going to become the sauce. I'm just gonna let it cool down a tiny bit. I might spoon off a little bit of the fat, but I'm not gonna go crazy. And then I can shred right in the pot, right into all of this braisey sauce. These ribs are no longer too hot to handle. So I'm going to just spoon off a little bit of fat from the top and then start shredding, which is pretty easy to see, that top layer. If you were working ahead and let this chill, the top layer of fat would be easy to remove. Okay, so now I'm gonna use tongs, 2 forks, like whatever works for you, to start pulling the ribs apart. If you've ever made pulled pork, this is going to be a pretty familiar process. I mean, it's therapeutic in the way that like I'm getting like a lemongrass braised beef facial right now, which, you know, recommend. These are lovely and shreddy, still have, you know, some nuggets with bigger bites. I want to make sure that we're good on seasoning. It's really deep and rich, but you still get the ginger and the brightness from the lemongrass. Needs a little salt. Go ahead and like season to your liking at this point. My water's boiling for my ramen noodles, so I'm just gonna cook those and put it all together. These are fresh noodles. Even though they were frozen, they're gonna cook in like 4 or 5 minutes. So at this point, you would wanna be ready with everything for doctoring your plate. And just keep an eye on them. Give them a stir every once in a while so they don't stick. Noodles are ready. So I'm gonna get them into a big bowl. These will definitely stick if you let them sit for too long. I'm going to just give myself a little insurance, toss them with a little oil. Gonna make a plate or a bowl. I'm making a bowl. Gonna start with some noodles because it's a noodle bowl. I'm gonna get a little bit of this delicious marinated shreddy beef and some of my pickled veggies. If these have been sitting for a little while, just make sure to toss so that all of the delicious flavored vinegar that is at the bottom of the bowl comes back up to the top. And I love to serve this also with like a little spoonful of sambal. Sambal, if you haven't had it, is in Indonesian. It's also, you'll find it a lot in Malaysian cooking. Condiment. It's essentially chilies, sugar, and salt. If you have another favorite hot sauce, you could feel free, and you want to add a little spice, to add a dab. Now I want a beer. I want a beer really bad now. So that is the braised short rib noodle bowl, ready to be devoured. I just feel like I'm the right person to devour it because there's nobody else here. The noodles have like that really excellent springiness, and the kind of way that ramen noodles have those little twists and bends in them is such a nice counterbalance to the meat, which in its shreddiness is almost like unctuous and really fatty and rich. And so you get a texture between the two of them. And then you have these bright and crunchy veggies, which are not only the texture, but bringing that bright hit. So they're bringing a bright hit visually, which this dish really needed, but also the brightness in the flavor and waking up your whole palate. It's so good. I'd like to be left alone now, if that's all right with you. I'm gonna go get a blanket and just put my feet up and great, see ya.